How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massa Beer Reviews, back with a little bit of Muckraker up in this piece, in form of their BraamBijou. Yeah, this is, I'm not going to point it at you, I got to read it, because it's a traditional method spontaneous beer, fermented in French oak wine puncheons, free fermented on New Jersey blackberries, and finished in fresh Chardonnay cask with Madagascar vanilla. Brewed and bottled by Muckraker Brewing Company, Franklin, New Jersey. It's 5.5% alcohol by volume. And this is from 2021. Spontaneous beer brewed in the traditional Belgian method and fermented in French oak wine puncheons. The lead was conditioned on fresh New Jersey pinelands blackberries and finished in French oak Chardonnay casks with Madagascar vanilla. Enjoy by 2024. Store upright in a cool, dark place. Serve at 55F. 55F. It's probably close to 55F, I'm guessing. Where'd I put my key? There's a cork in this sucker. I keep my beer fridge at 48, and this has been out for probably a good, I don't know, half hour maybe? So we're probably hitting it right at 55F. So we'll see what's what. It's been a little bit since I've had some Muckraker. I actually stopped by there. That's actually where I got this bottle. I stopped by there with my buddy Keith. Well, Keith was in the car. He didn't go in. When we went on our little trip to Orange County, New York. I picked this up then. All the purpose and meaning of actually sharing it. I suck at wine bottles. And I was just in the mood tonight. Oh, God. Tom, get better corks. Or I could actually just open it like a normal human being. Yeah, I was gonna open a dirt and beer tube of Palooza, but I got a little too tipsy and Irish goodbye, and then Keith kind of moved away. So sad. So he's not local, so he just can't pop over for a beer anymore. And I was just kind of wanting something of this ilk. So, come on, be gentle. I just don't want to get all the cork pieces in here. Not that I haven't had to deal with that before. There you go. Slowly at the end, you let that pop kind of push out any kind of particulate and bits and pieces. I got cork everywhere because I opened things awesome. Should have just sabered it inside my room here, huh? That would have been fancier. So, let's dive in. So what are we expecting here? A lot of fruit. Muckraker definitely leans not as super hyper tart or super hyper sour. So their beers tend to be a little bit more my kind of speed, as opposed to somebody like Cascade or even Side Project, something like that. A little bit more kind of sweeter than Jester King, but kind of around those ranges. That thing looks beautiful. Looks like cherry raspberry juice, very framboise. Very wine-like. You talk about those wine puncheons. You know what I mean? It very much looks like a red. Sans, or plus the carbonation. So clear, man. Didn't expect it to come off that clear, but you're talking about a beer that sat for a bit. So it's a pretty beer. Pretty bottle, pretty beer, pretty label. Let's get nose. It smells pretty nice, man. I mean, it is all the blackberries. I say blueberries, but blackberries are belong to us. That vanilla is really cool. Not because it's like an overt kind of vanilla in there, but I think it acts as almost like an MSG'd version of a fresh French vanilla. When you're talking about putting stuff wood on wood kind of thing, usually like a nice kind of, oak tannin obviously, but then it's that nice kind of bonus of vanilla. A lot of times when you use puncheons, or casks that held specific things, it might have stripped all the vanilla characteristic out of there. So it's not like it's a vanilla addition of like this big, huge vanilla proportion. It's almost like the vanilla you'd expect from hyper fresh French oak. Jesus, words are hard. So I like that. I think the wine cask here, the wine portion of the show, is just kind of amping up these blackberries. It's giving this vinous characteristic to the blackberries. So almost like a blackberry wine to a certain extent, but nothing overly tart, nothing overly acidic, at least in the nose. For me, it smells like it's going to come off a little bit sweeter. And a bit rich, a bit explosive, actually. Kind of like a little bit of a, like, okay, you know, dealing with something a little bit bigger. So I'm just going to dive in. Cheers. Wow. I did not expect it to be that dry. I didn't. I like it, though. This is really good. This is really good. You know, from the get, when I had Tom's beers, Tom from Muckraker, I actually really enjoyed them quite a bit. You know, there's a lot of cool flavors that he was doing that, not that I haven't had before, but, you know, to get it locally and actually be able to converse with somebody and face-to-face it, enjoy such things is quite nice. They were a little bit more kind of in your face, though. The flavoring was a little bit more kind of, you know, like this is this beer with that. And when you drank it, it was this beer with that kind of flavor, whether it be gin or fruit or whatever. In a very fun way, in a very tasty way. One of the reasons why I actually dug the brewery before it even opened, to be perfectly honest with you. And even him moving in a spot and serving beer, it was kind of the same, but not really. A little bit more subdued, but the flavors were still there. There still was a very much a kind of like, I hesitate to use the word aggressiveness, but there was like a meaningful, like this beer had this, so you got that kind of thing from it, which I appreciate. You know, when someone puts the first, you know, the headlining band kind of thing, you know, the headliner in the beer, when you get that as the predominant flavor, it's very much appreciated to a certain extent. But this one is a little bit different for me, because you get everything in here. You know, you're getting those blackberries coming to a head. They are the star of the show, but they're not overly aggressive. The beer part here is tart, but at the same time sweet without being overly aggressive. The punch and wood thing here is the most aggressive part. Like the blackberry is star of the show. The dryiness is very, very much star of the show. This is a beer, under attenuated beer, I would assume, in combination with the oak tannins kind of drying everything out. I don't think it's hyper aggressive. And then when you're talking about the vanilla, adding, as like I said before, kind of like this kind of like infusion of what you'd expect from like a fresh oak kind of thing. I think this is the by far and away the most deft balancing act that that Muckraker's pulled off in any of the beers in a very, very tasty way. Even the Chardonnay portion of the show here, the wine portion of the show, which adds this subtle vinous characteristic without it being sour, you know, and that's probably might be my favorite part of the beer, because I'm not a big wine guy, I'll admit that. There's something about wine that I appreciate, and it is that kind of drying tartness, and it's probably actually Chardonnay's actually adding a bit of that dryness to this too. And then it kind of, you know, instead of getting, you know, super enamel ripping sour, or even close to that, a la, like I said, Cascade and Side Projects of the World and stuff like that. It's cool because he's kind of built this beer around that premise, but without having that aggressiveness. You know, you don't get that super hyper aggressive tartness, but with the Chardonnay, the oak tannin, probably the actual fruit itself. And then the beer adding this tart on tart, super subtle tart on tart on tart on tart that builds this, not big level, but meaningful, purposeful level, where it doesn't get too heavy-handed, it doesn't get all in one direction. I like this a lot, actually. It was very tasty. Very tasty. I'm kind of glad I didn't open it with anybody else. I can drink it all in my head, because this is the kind of beer you drink your head. You talk about 5 and change. Very, very aggressive flavoring, but in a very approachable, probably the best word I could use, way. Yeah. Everything in this beer that's on the label shows, proves, shines, but doesn't step on each other, and serves a purpose, because some are bigger than others, some are, you know, smaller than others, but nothing is too much to where the other one gets lost, and each one serves its purpose at what level it's at. You know what I mean? Like that drying, the blackberry are pretty much the stars of the show. The reason they're the stars of the show is because of everybody else. I don't think they would be that cool star of the show if it wasn't for the Chardonnay, the vanilla, the wood kind of doing what it does here. And the beer itself, I mean, you can't make this beer without the actual beer liquid portion of the show being good. This is really good stuff, honestly. Like, I was diving into it, being hemming and hawing, and be like, I want this kind of beer tonight. What is it going to be? And it ended up being, not that I don't expect good things or even great things from Muckraker. This is better than I expected in a very, very tasty way. So let's talk about the beer real quick instead of me just kind of talking about fucking fringes of whatever. Tartness up front. Nice mouthfeel. Not dense or thick, but not thin. Probably for something of this line, like a Spon kind of lambic-y kind of beer. Again, blackberry star of the show, immediately hit with that wood. But while you're going through those two portions, because it's a back and forth a little bit between those blackberries, a little bit of tart, a little bit of seediness, a little earthiness in that blackberry, that wood hits you hard. That Chardonnay kind of props that up. It adds a little vinous characteristic without getting too heavy-handed. And like I said, I think if words are hard. I don't think if you don't, there's a double negative. If the vanilla is not added here, I think this beer kind of is two in one direction. And vanilla adds a subtle kind of like sweet component. Not that the beer isn't sweet in and of itself. There's that fruit in there providing that sweetness. A sweetness along with that kind of vanilla that kind of tricks your mind into this fresh oaky thing that works out really, really well. Absolutely tasty beer. Is this one of the better tart, sour beers? I don't want to be that generic on this. But let's be generic on it. Because that's a wide berth. You know, sour is such a generic term, it shouldn't even be used because there's so many things encompassing in this. I call this more tart than sour, but we'll put it in there. It's one of the better sour beers that I've had as of late. Yes, Mount Rushmore status. That wide of a berth, and I'd still put it in there. Don't have to whittle it down anymore from there. Valued availability. I forget what I paid for this. It wasn't cheap. But you can't get this. I mean, it's not expensive either. I don't think this is over $30 a bottle. I think it's well worth $30 a bottle, even a bit more. But you know, I think you can actually get this at bottle shops too. I don't think it's all Muckraker, but I wonder if this still can be had. Kind of curious about that one. And leave you with, if you like what you like this. If you like spontaneously fermented fruit beers, Aged Oak, you'll like this. Yeah. I feel like fruited tart, fruited sour beers. Not in a exploding candle kind of way, in a more tasty, this kind of way. You like this? There you go. Reviewing the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there, if you want to talk about it, let me know if you've had this beer. I don't know if you've had Muckraker before. I'd really like to know. Massive Beers. Want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massif. We've talked to Tom before. Before his brewery even opened, we talked to him. Go check that out. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a little bit of Muckraker right now. Hope to see you next time. Cheers.